for being with us today at the International Career Panel. And today's version is going to be focusing on international law. And we have a very exciting panel of women here for you today. On behalf of the Tennessee World Affairs Council, let me also thank our program partners who are participating today. Those include Belmont University for their Center for International Business, Lipscomb University, Department of History, Politics, and Philosophy, Tennessee Technology University, Department of Foreign Languages, and Middle Tennessee State University. Thank you for those sponsors, as well as the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce International Business Council. Let me remind you to register for Thursday's career panel. We'll be talking with Foreign Service Officer Alan DeBow, diplomat in residence, about joining the Foreign Service and working as an American diplomat abroad or at the State Department generally. That is Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Central Time. Lastly, our panelists are very anxious to answer your questions, so please make sure to start adding them to the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and not in the chat box. So you can still use the chat box for other, perhaps just comments, but if you want to have a direct question that will be posed during the Q&A part of the event, then we ask that you use the Q&A feature. All right. As I'd mentioned previously, we are so excited to be having this event here today. We are honored to have a very esteemed group of women from across the globe who have taken time out of their days, evenings really, to be speaking with us about what it is like to be an international lawyer, a lawyer in international law. How the event is going to be structured. I'm going to begin by briefly introducing our four panelists. And they're joining us from all over the world, right? From London and France and Georgia, of course, the country, not the state. And after I introduce them very briefly, we're going to pivot to a 1-hour moderated session. And then I'm going to open the floor and refer to those questions that were posed in Q&A. Again, you can pose those questions as the conversation develops organically in that first hour, or you can pose them afterward. I also want to note that when you are doing those questions, when you're asking those questions, you can direct them to one panelist in particular, say one individual poses a particular comment or makes something that you want clarification on, you have further follow-up, you may do that. Or you can say, my question is for all of the panelists generally. Both ways of doing that is perfectly appropriate. Without further ado, let me go ahead and I'll introduce myself very briefly. My name is Professor Susan Haynes. I am a professor of political science here at Lipscomb University, specializing in international affairs and international law. Also a board member of the Tennessee World Affairs Council, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan organization here in Middle Tennessee, associated with the wider World Affairs Council of America. And our mission is to increase knowledge about global affairs among all constituencies, among high school students, college students, graduate students, and beyond. We just want to get people excited about international affairs and knowledgeable about that. And this event stems from that passion and that pursuit. So that's me in a nutshell and why I'm here, but I want to go ahead and give very brief, just basically the name, where they're from, and the positions of our panelists. But please note, they are all incredibly experienced professionals with an array of experience. And I would really love if everyone could go to the Tennessee World Affairs Council website, the event page, and read their full bios, because they're absolutely worth reading. In terms of our lineup today, we first have Ioana Bara-Busila. who is an international lawyer in Strasbourg, France. She's, I believe, 6 hours ahead of us currently, who recently finished a mission with the European Court of Human Rights. We have Clàudia Baró Huelmo, who is currently, I believe, in London, about 5 hours ahead. We have Tina Burjarliani, who is coming to us from Georgia 9 hours ahead, I believe, an international lawyer who served as the first Deputy Minister of Justice of Georgia from 2007 to 2012. And we have Vicki Prais, who is coming to us also from London and is an independent human rights consultant. So thank you, ladies, very much for joining us, which I believe for all of you is this evening. So I sent all of our panelists a series of questions just to get to know them better and their experiences better, and to try to figure out where there are commonalities and distinctions. And today's questions are going to be based upon those responses, right? One of the things that was mentioned throughout the preliminary responses is that there's no traditional career path in international law. And because of this, the best thing that we can do for anyone who is interested in international law is to try to highlight those individuals, women who have achieved success in this field, and to try to gain insight from your own experiences. So to my audience members, your own path is going to look very different, more than likely, than the path that is discussed on this screen. We're going to show you 4 different experiences, 4 different professions, 4 different lives, right, that have taken different routes. But perhaps the hope is that in hearing their experiences, you can find guideposts for your own journey. That's as much as we can give you, right, in this wild terrain that is international law. So let's go ahead and begin the moderated portion, and I'll kind of begin with my first question. So in viewing the online bios, which again, I encourage our audience to look at online, one of the things that jump out for a student might be that outside of the United States, which all of you guys are outside of the United States, one can earn an undergraduate degree in law. Then, as all of you all did, you could go on for a master's degree specializing in a particular area of law, right? So I'm curious, what influenced your decision specifically to pursue law? Because you did so at a fairly early age, right, as an undergraduate. And then what prompted you to look at international law specifically? Tina, I know you made the choice to study international law, specifically at the undergraduate level, which is slightly unusual. So I'll go ahead and start with you.
Hello, everyone. Susan, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to participate in this webinar with excellent international legal professionals from different parts of the world. Yes, you are right. I decided to pursue international career in international law when I was in high school and had to make a decision about my profession. It was a bit, I mean, this decision was kind of influenced by several factors, including the fact that I was born in Soviet Union or Soviet Georgia. Myself and my family members and everybody, almost everybody around me, had this very strong desire and determination to see the world outside the Soviet sphere of influence. I was watching every TV program possible and available to know what London looked like, for instance. And many years after that, when I first went to London, I realized that I knew a lot about districts and the parts of the city and the landmarks and everything else from my TV time when I was still like, I don't know, 8, 9 years old. So that this was a factor. I wanted to know more about the world. I went to school specialized in math and science, and physics was my passion for many years. But again, the situation I was in, like my country was just after the Civil War when I went to university. I had to be smart in choosing the profession, and science definitely was not a possibility. So I decided to become a lawyer, but the only thing I could do was to choose the part of law that I loved a lot, and this was like international, and that would allow me to explore the world. And for unknown reasons, I don't know why, but the top universities in Georgia did have the specialized faculty. Like in the law schools, there was a faculty called international law and international relations. So I chose international law and got a specialization and qualification of lawyer. So I studied for 5 years there. But during these years, I did a few exchange programs in UK, in the US, in other countries, like short-term, couple weeks or semester or year at the longest. So it's different factors that's really influenced my decision, and I'm happy that I made this decision, and I've never regretted. I enjoyed a lot. I've enjoyed every bit of it, and despite the fact that I was 16, 17 years old, I was lucky that the decision was the right one.
Thank you, Tina. I'll repeat the question for the rest of you if you would like to weigh in. It's just what influenced you to pursue law initially and then international law specifically?
I'll take a go if you'll have me. Hi, everyone. I must confess my motives were not as pure as Tina in choosing to choose law, basically. When I was finishing school, actually, the subjects that I enjoyed the most were history and art history. But then when I sat down and I made my list of, okay, what am I going to choose for university next year? I realized, obviously, coming off from high school, oh no, I don't want to be a teacher. If I study history, I'll have to be a teacher. No, I don't want to do that. So coming from a family of lawyers, actually, that got me thinking. And I realized what my mother was doing, for instance, going to court every day, coming home and explaining, oh, the judge did this, but the client said that, and I saved it this way. There was something very strategic about the practice of law that I thought first that I might be good at, so I could potentially earn a living at it. And the second one that seemed quite fascinating. However, I must confess, when I first started my first year of law school, this is not going to be a popular opinion or maybe too popular, but it was miserable. And that is because I did not have international law in my first year in law school. And so actually my first year, I was just wondering, have I chosen right? Have I chosen wrong? I'm doing administrative law. I'm falling asleep with my textbook. But my parents were like, just wait for a moment, give it a go, take a second shot at it during your second year. And that's actually when I found public international law, and I was blessed with an incredibly passionate and patient teacher that just opened a whole new world for me. And from then on, I just knew this is what I like, this is what I want to do.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll also weigh in as well. And actually, Claudia's story is very similar to mine. I also came from a family of lawyers too, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. And so I heard lots of sort of stories. My father was an advocate going to court and things. So, and I'd always thought that law was a very good discipline, and it gave you a very good suite of skills that you could kind of transfer if you wanted. And then similar as well, I really did not enjoy my law degree for the first, I think, 2 years, studying trusts and equity and land law. I kind of just wanted to cry with that. And it was only actually, I think in my third year, when I started doing international law, civil liberties, that it actually spoke to me and resonated with me, to the degree that, like my colleagues on the panel, that I went and got a master's degree in human rights and civil liberties. And that's really what my calling was, plus doing a volunteering stint as a student in a prison creche, really sort of crystallized for me that this was the kind of work that I wanted to do, and actually that remains a theme through my work. So yeah, not a dissimilar sort of path from Claudia's.
Hello, everyone. I will share also my experience because it's a little bit different, and I think our audience is interested also in exceptions. I didn't want it to go study law. Actually, I wanted to study political science. And when you want to study political science in France, one needs to go to study either law or human sciences for 2 years. Here I relate to what Clàudia was telling, that when looking to history, I was no, I cannot be a teacher all my life. Although I like to share my experience and to exchange knowledge and to brainstorm, but this was not the type of profession I imagined for all my life. So I took law, but it was like, I was not comfortable with my decision. I took law just because I didn't want to go to study history. And I started to make research to see what can I do, what are the requirements in order to be able to get in a political science institute. And this is how I discovered international lawyer master and all this international world. I think I had some some luck somewhere, because I don't know if in your countries happens the same, but in France you start your first year of undergraduate without any exam, and you are able to move from one domain to another or to just give up. And there are a lot of students that are giving up just because they don't like what they choose. Just like Clàudia said, it was miserable the first year. It was hard. It was a totally different way of learning. But hopefully we had counselors, career counselors and coaches in the university, and I was lucky enough to discover something that interested me in the first place.
Thank you. Well, you've given me a nice kind of segue in your discussion in regards to kind of the different type of areas within school. Now I want to kind of catapult to the different areas in practice. So I know that international law is a very multifaceted field, and one can work in a variety of different areas. So it sounds like many of you came to the realization international laws was the area for you later on in law school, perhaps. I mean, Tina being the exception there at the very beginning, but coming to the realization, yes, I want to do international law. But then there's that other decision of, okay, where do I work within this field? And Clàudia, in your question response, I know that you worked in a lot of these areas. You worked in government and with a university, and also are now with a private firm. So I posed the question to everyone that after you decided that you wanted to work in international law, how did you decide, how did you narrow down where to work? And Clàudia, I'm going to start with you, since you've kind of worked in many different areas.
Certainly, happy to. Short answer, trial and error. So basically, I was doing an exchange year actually at the University of California, Berkeley, and I was about to finish my undergraduate degree. And so I had a bit of an existential crisis thinking, what next? I know what I like, but where do I want to practice it? And so something that has served me very well during the years is just to try things. And at that point in time, I decided I want to try working at an embassy. I'm a Spanish national, so I just emailed, I think, every single Spanish embassy in Europe asking, "Hi, my name is Clàudia. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Would you have me as an intern for a few months so I can see the work that you do at the embassy?" And surprisingly, I got some positive responses. So I moved to Luxembourg for 3-4 months at the end of my undergraduate degree, and I worked there at the embassy for a number of months. While they treated me incredibly well, I must confess I was a bit not disappointed, but I expected something completely different in the sense that I've also always very enjoyed a fast pace, and diplomacy is certainly not very fast paced when compared to other areas of international law. So I honestly didn't think it was a good fit, especially because one of the things I enjoy the most is the oral advocacy part of the job. And there it's mostly jumping from meeting to meeting and speech to speech, but not really pleading, which is what I thought might be my strongest point and something that I enjoy. So after that, I decided to do my master's in public international law at the LSE. And going back to that wonderful teacher I told you about earlier, he got in touch actually when I was just finishing my LLM, and he offered me a position as a lecturer at my previous alma mater. And so I went back to Barcelona. I taught public international law, international human rights law, law of international organizations, and international criminal law for a year. And I actually discovered that after all, I do enjoy being a teacher, very much so. However, the issue there became that I realized I couldn't really provide my students with a practical perspective of what I was teaching them. And as you all know by now, probably, international law is one thing in theory, and it's something else altogether in practice. And so I thought, I'm teaching them something they can learn from a textbook. I should just go practice in international law. And then when I actually have an actual proper idea of how this all works in real life, maybe then I'll come back to academia in this sense. And this decision was actually further reinforced because I was also working part-time at a small Spanish firm doing completely unrelated banking litigation. Um, but then it actually showed me, okay, I really, really enjoy international law, and I really, really enjoy being a practitioner in law, an advocate. And so the goal then was to, how can I mix both of them? And that's actually what led me to apply to a number of firms, first in London, then in Geneva, now back in London, in private practice, where I have been ever since doing mostly public international law and investment treaty arbitration.
Thank you. For my other panelists, what shaped your decision to go into the area or where you are currently in international law?
I liked public international law from the very beginning. This is this field of international law that regulates the relationship between states, and I liked it most. And after that, I was interested in human rights. But when I graduated from the law school, I did not really have opportunity to practice public international law. First of all, I think as a matter of fact, it's very difficult to find a place in public international law. Very few people manage to build a career there. You have to be not only very good and hardworking, but also very lucky. It's a very small group of people who do typical public international law work. So this was not an option. So I satisfied my passion for international law in Jessup moot court competition. If you don't know about Jessup, I think it's time to to learn about it. It will help you. It helped me and a lot of others to learn international law, different aspects of it, and also to imitate the litigation. Litigation in international courts of justice. So that's what I did, and then I joined a British NGO, Women Aid International, that worked on Caucasus, like Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. And I had this like less than 1 year to work with them. And at the same time, I applied to master's LLM programs and funding for that. And then things have changed in my own country, Georgia, and it was possible to work for the government because working for the government was not considered as being a corrupt public official, but quite contrary. So basically the new government led by very young reformers found us like people who studied abroad. Georgia is a small country. It has a population of less than 4 million. Of course, there were not many young Georgians studying abroad. And first of all, not many people could afford that. Second, the programs funded by US government or UK government or European Union were well known. So this new group of people in politics went to the donors and said like, okay, can you please tell us who are these Georgians who study abroad, are doing masters? And this is how we were found, basically, and invited and encouraged to work for the public sector. And I was appointed as head of the unit at the Ministry of Justice responsible for state representation to the European Court of Human Rights. It was a huge responsibility for me, but I had a very clear instruction from the minister that the goal was not winning cases in the European Court of Human Rights, but understanding the requirements and bringing the national legislation and practice in line with the European Convention on Human Rights. So we did lose a lot of cases in Strasbourg or settled them because we knew that the law needed to be changed or the practice needed to be improved. Then I went to the US. I received the funding, the scholarship from the State Department, the Muskie, Edmund Muskie Scholarship, and I went to the American University of Washington College of Law in DC to do my LLM. And DC environment also really helped me or strengthened my love and passion for public international law and human rights law. And then I also did my internship at the War Crime Research Office and studied international criminal law. I came back to Georgia after almost 2 years in the US, which covered my LLM and working in a law firm in Atlanta, Georgia. So when I came back to Georgia, I knew what was available for me there. I definitely had lots of opportunities to focus on human rights and international law, public international law in general. So then, of course, the situation was different, and we did have cases in the European Court of Human Rights that we had to win, including interstate cases against the Russian Federation. And I was responsible for the whole process from drafting, preparing the application to the end, so like litigation hearings at the courts. And at the same time, unfortunately, we faced war and military aggression, and we filed case at the International Court of Justice against Russia under the international covenant against on the elimination of forms of racial discrimination, the third convention. First time we had to be creative and find a way to go to the ICJ and somehow bring Russia to the court and make a declaration that we wanted to resolve the disputes through legal means. So that's luck that happened to me. I loved international law always. I worked very, very hard, but at the same time, there are a lot of people who do the same, but do not really have opportunity to practice international law and appear in front of the international courts. So like Clàudia mentioned, I also had to I had opportunity to handle the investment arbitration cases on behalf of the government. So when I retired from the government, then I continued practicing international law. I continued litigation in the European Court of Human Rights, but at the same time, I tried to work, and I did work for the American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative in the Middle East and North Africa, where I focused on legal reforms and judicial reforms and bringing best international practice and standards to those countries. So that's again a lot of factors, geopolitical, that influenced my preferences and my career path.
Thank you so much, Tina. And Ioana, do you want to respond to what shaped your interest in the area that you're currently in international law?
Of course, thank you. In my case, actually, I always had a plan. I wanted to work in the international environment, but I wasn't sure if private or public area would fit me better. Therefore, I tried both of them. I switched from public sector to multinational companies. And in the end, I tried. You cannot know what type of experience fits your profile until you try it. You must make a deep introspection and search for your strengths and try to see what are the opportunities that come around and jump in. It's important, I think, to have a plan, a general plan, to always be focused on your goals, general goals, but in the same time to be flexible and to see the potential when a situation arrives or a professional opportunity arrives. I had a few situations during my career where I wasn't able to find a job that fits perfectly into my professional project. Nevertheless, I took it because I didn't want to spend too much time doing nothing or just being alone. It's very important to be in a community and to being in touch with people in this kind of environment. Therefore, I prefer, even though it was totally out of my my scope and objectives, like my first experience in Romania with the Mediation Council. It was a private, it was a very young institution that was created by the state in order to implement mediation profession in Romania. And I only did administrative law mainly and litigation, but in administrative law. It was really not my thing. And after many years, I discovered how much that experience helped me and empowered me, and how we can switch or we can use different competencies that we earn in a specific environment in a totally different world. So in my case, as I said, I wasn't sure about it. Now I know. After almost 13 years of experience, I am a public international lawyer. It fits my values, my objectives, and I think I will stay in this in this area for the next mission. Thank you.
Vicki, do you want to add anything?
Shall do, and I think the first thing I'll say is I'm the complete opposite to Ioana. I had no plan, and I just went where my feet took me and where the opportunities lay. And I think for me, it was very much luck, timing, and you know, just as I say, not having a plan. But I think for me, it was more sort of thematically where my career sort of drove me. As I mentioned before there, working in a prison creche when I was a student sort of set me off on the kind of path that I am now. So that's always been a bit of a theme through my work, people deprived of liberty, dignity behind bars. So I don't say that that's necessarily driven me to the organizations that I've worked for, but it's always been a sort of in the background somewhere there. But I kind of cut my teeth in a small NGO in Geneva before I did my master's. And then from there sort of continued as an immigration and asylum lawyer for 6.5 years. And I've just been very lucky, you know, the opportunities have come my way and I've just not said no to anything, which also means that I've had aberrations in my career. So I was working on procurement in the Council of Europe, which was completely kind of out of my sort of comfort zone in terms of the work as a human rights lawyer. But it gave me a bit more, you know, business acumen and things like that, and then kind of found my way back again into the human rights world, and then worked in academia and with our British Foreign Office here. So I think that's kind of where my journey and path has been. And a sort of, if I offer any advice, is, you know, just I think take every opportunity that comes your way, because you never know where it will lead you, who you will meet through it, what contacts you'll make, and what experience you will get from it. So that's been my sort of journey.
Thank you so much, Vicki. And I'm actually going to start with you with this next question. But all of you have mentioned, and Clàudia in particular, talking about trial and error, and Ioana, you built upon that about, well, how do you do this trial thing, right? So in terms of how do you go about trial and error, often people mention the importance of internships, but I want to go just a little bit deeper to ask you, particularly, Vicki, when we were talking preliminarily before this in regards to the question responses, you mentioned your advice was don't just focus on something like Human Rights Watch or Amnesty International, those really large organizations, but perhaps focus your attempts on smaller organizations. So I want to start and ask you, what are some smaller organizations that might offer internships? And I know you said there might be so many that you can't even mention them. So we might be able to put some of those in the chat box and some for later. But just for those who might be taking notes, I'll start with you. What are some recommendations in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, so my feeling about that is, you know, go where you can add value, go where you can kind of add to the conversation and lend your skills and expertise, because it's very much a two-way relationship, the internship. Not only are you giving to the organization, but you want to get sort of skills, contacts, networks actually back from that. So that's why I say go where you can be a real piece in the jigsaw puzzle in terms of that organization. And you might just be a small cog in a big wheel if you go to the very big names. But you set me a challenge, because I went off and had a look at some organizations to see if I could find any that were currently recruiting. And so, for example, I found a small asylum charity, and I think what they called Asylus. And they were looking, or are currently looking, for volunteer researchers who can help to give some information about country of origin information in relation to asylum appeals. So, you know, there are very small organizations which are looking for that intern support. But I do add one caveat, and it's this, that interns really should be paid for their work, valued for their work, remunerated. And it's a conversation, I think my colleagues will probably agree, that's a conversation that we're having and we're starting to have about that whole piece around interns, because the work they do is as valuable as a staffer. So so yeah, there's a lot of value in being an intern, but in a way that is meaningful for that person. So I think I'll probably leave it at that.
Thank you. Let's see, Clàudia, do you have anything to add in regards to recommendations for, I mean, it could be large or smaller organizations that might be providing internships or good places to look?
I would actually say take a look at United Nations volunteers. So it's basically a United Nations system that was created not that long ago, and they're looking for people to volunteer in pretty much every corner of the world. And depending on what you're interested in, for example, let's say studies on gender-based violence or issues of humanitarian law or community outreach, there's pretty much a lot for everybody. The only potential drawback of that is that sometimes they do require prior work experience, but there are also positions that are available. Even if you don't have a law degree or if you don't have any previous experience, it's not going to be maybe as challenging as some other positions, but I would certainly say it's a good resource to take a look at if you just want to get started.
Thank you.
And they pay.
Very important, right? Especially for those who are considering traveling. I think that the payment option can be absolutely a barrier to that. Tina, do you have anything to offer in regards to recommendations for internships?
Yeah, so as Vicki mentioned, I think it's very, very important to find a place where you can really contribute. They need you very much, more than probably larger organizations. Another aspect is that wherever you go, if you have this knowledge and love of international law, you can bring this and you can show others what's the added value of using international law in their work. It's not always so obvious, and especially lawyers or organizations working on legal matters rely a lot on domestic systems, and sometimes they don't even look at what international mechanisms are available for them. So when you have this knowledge and understanding and bring it there, it's helpful and it's appreciated most times. Also, I just like, because the audience is in the US, I know that now some of organizations are announcing the internships, like IFES, International Foundation of Election Systems, as well as I saw International Republican Institute. NDI has the National Democratic Institute on a regular basis, the internships. Now I know that some of them are having virtual internships because of the pandemic. American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative has regular internships for law students in particular, but the other organizations that I mentioned, that you don't have to have a law degree or be a law student, you still have opportunity to do international work, and it's at least it will help you understand and determine and decide whether this is what you want to do in the future, or that's probably not your thing. So yeah, that's some of the big names, and I will share in the chat some other links that I searched for.
Thank you so much. Ioana, do you have anything?
Yes, Susan. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that international organizations usually have specific periods where you can apply for internships. So one should pay attention to the timelines, because, for instance, in order to get an internship in September, you need to apply in March. So this could be a tricky aspect if we don't know about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I know in your responses to the questions, we had there were a lot of recommendations in regards to advice that you might provide to those who are currently either in law school or currently undergraduates, you know, in the United States, where we do our undergraduate education prior to law school. So I want to ask, in addition to internships, in addition to education, what are other ways that students can set themselves apart and set themselves up for success in this particular area? And I'll just go ahead and start with you with this question.
Yes, thank you for this question. I think it's a very good question because usually I realize that what differentiates one from another is the passion, the empowerment, and the strengths. When you do it with passion, when you are triggered by what you are doing, you can see it. It's so obvious that everyone can see it. So first of all, I would say analyze a little bit your skills, your soft skills, and your competencies. Look on how you are drafting, if you like public speaking, I don't know, do you like interacting with other people? Take a look to what exactly triggers you, and then move to the competencies and try to find the profession in the legal domain that fits best to your profile. In addition, what worked in my case was that I keep studying and I keep acquiring new skills. I got certified as an interpreter when I was young because I love studying languages and cultures. And this is something that now I'm using all day, every day in my work. I got certified as a mediator because I am a proponent of dialogue and settlement, and I think that we can always find a solution that fits everyone. So soft skills that were how can I say, that were important to me became competencies. And I realized that in my work, this kind of approach worked, actually. And yes, if I could add another thing, you need to also to look like for the internship in areas where not everyone would go, and then to take that experience to the next level. It might help.
Thank you. Tina, what are your suggestions in regards to other ways that people might be able to set themselves apart?
Yeah, I mentioned Jessup. That's, I think, I mean, for me, this was very, very helpful. And I am friend of Jessup, which is an official status. And I participated in Jessup when I was in my second year in law school. This is like Philip Jessup International Law Moot Court Competition. And university students, law school students can participate in this competition. And the international rounds, first of all, there are national rounds, and then we have regional rounds, and international rounds are held in DC, except for last year and this year because of pandemic. It's like an Olympics for us who love international law. And we, so you can participate, you learn a lot about international law, practical skills as well, how to prepare the case and how to litigate. And also, I mean, Jessup is a big one, but there are other international moot court competitions as well, human rights ones, like in international humanitarian law. Jean Pictet is also very good. We have Telders, that is also in international public international law. Again, I will share the names in the chat box so you can find them easily. So these are for students, and law school years and law school resources can be used very well to participate in those competitions as a group, as a team from your university. And you will learn a lot, but also you will meet others from different countries. And networking is extremely helpful in international career in general, and including in international law. So I would really encourage students to find information about this international competitions and participate in them. You don't have to win and become a champion. I know you will want to and will achieve this, but participation itself is extremely satisfying, meeting and making new friends, and feeling yourself to be part of a great community of international lawyers.
Thank you, Tina. And Clàudia, do you have anything to add in regards to how they can set themselves apart?
I do, but I have to start by saying Jessup. And I have to say, Tina, I tell literally everybody who will listen that I am a former UK Jessup champion, so it stays with you. But now getting back to the question at hand, I would say languages and mooting have been covered. The third one that I would suggest would be initiative. One thing that has served me very, very well in the past is reaching out to people working in the organizations I'm interested in. Because more often than not, if they have the time and if you basically put your case forward well, you will get an answer back, maybe agreeing to a 15-minute phone call where they can tell you about the organization, the culture, or maybe a little bit more of an insight as to what exactly they're looking for in that position. And then it's a thing very welcome for anyone working in recruitment. If in your cover letter you say, oh, I took the initiative to talk to this person, if they're of course okay with you sharing that conversation. And it only reaffirmed my commitment to join you because of this and this and this and that. And I think that's not something that a lot of people do. And I think it's something that's certainly very impressive. And it shows that you're committed, actually, and that you want that really badly.
Contacting all those embassies, that's initiative, but nobody did that for you. So I think that you've shown that. Vicki, what advice would you provide?
Yeah, so kind of segueing on from what Clàudia says around that networking and LinkedIn and reaching out to people and asking for that informational chat. And I think actually now the pandemic has given us that opportunity to reach out to people who you would never ordinarily capture because we can't go anywhere. Human rights professionals are on the move all the time, and kind of catching 10 minutes of them, you're doing very well. So I think there's a real sort of value in that. For me, I think the singular piece of advice is around writing and becoming a sort of mini expert in your human rights area, starting to think critically about human rights. And I don't say that you have to start writing a huge tome for the Harvard Law Journal or something like this, that you can just write a small blog piece for your university or for your school, but start to become a bit of a thought leader, a commentator, a thinker on the area of human rights that interests you. It will stand you in good stead when you go for an interview. You can say, well, actually, I've written about this issue, and here's my sort of position on it. So building and crafting those writing skills, which go neatly with mooting skills and advocacy skills, your oral advocacy skills. So that, I think, would be my sort of main piece of advice.
Thank you. And before we pivot, I have two more questions that might wrap into one in regards to work-life balance. But I know Pat Ryan is putting this in the chat box, but it seems like a natural fit into this conversation in regards to networking and seeking all opportunities, right? Seeking all opportunities to connect with potential mentors, to hear insights from other individuals. So Pat just put information about the Tennessee World Affairs Council in the chat box, and I would encourage our attendees to look further into that organization, and if they feel led to join that organization, because then you do get to connect to experienced individuals in the area of international affairs, and it gives you a very nice platform to do that networking, right? So that you're not reaching out cold, you're reaching out, the connections have already been made. Vicki, I also want to elaborate on a point that you made in regards to the present era or the present time with all of the complications that COVID brings. One of the benefits, and I believe someone else mentioned this previously, is that there's these virtual internships that are possible, but also there's no way that I would have been able to get this level of expertise on a panel. I don't know if any of you have been to Nashville or if any of you will be, but usually I'm restrained to those who are in the Nashville area, and here we have people all over the globe. So I do want to emphasize, the slight bright side to the current situation that we are in, and the fact that perhaps this makes it easier if you're a student to reach out to someone and even to have a video call. I don't know how many calls I had before COVID, and now it's most certainly more regular. It's not at all unusual to ask someone to meet in this capacity. So I think that could be to your benefit. All right, one of my last questions concerns, again, work-life balance. When I was discussing, I sent some preliminary questions to you all in regards to your day-to-day activities. And many of you guys responded by saying, okay, I do a lot of emails, there's virtual meetings, there's some travel. But one of the common things was there's always more work to be done. And your inbox is probably never going to be empty. There's never going to be an end to the day, actually. So you have to make that end. You have to make the call as to when your day ends and when your day starts. So I want to start by saying, how stressful do you find your work? And in what ways do you manage this stress? And Clàudia, I'll begin with you.
I feel like that's a trick question in case my employer is watching. International law is a highly competitive field, and with that comes a certain amount of stress because there's a limited number of positions, and actually one factor that induced me to to go into and stay in private practice is that for me personally, I do not manage uncertainty well. So I like knowing this is my job, this is my contract, I know what's going to happen now in a year, in 2 years. So for me, that's important in order to be able to manage my stress. So my first point then would be, you need to know what your limits are. You need to know what you're comfortable with. And I work in an international law firm. I work with our US offices quite a lot, with our Asia Pacific offices as well. So from the moment I wake up, I just know I'm going to have at least a dozen emails from certain people on this and this and this matter. So as I'm making my coffee, I actually make myself a list every day of priorities. Okay, what are the deadlines for the week? What are the deadlines for the month? What is the most important thing I need to get done today, with all the things that are already scheduled, like calls, catch-ups, events, but realistically, because if not, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. So don't be too harsh on yourself. And so for me, for example, what really helps me is I really like clearing my inbox. So anything that takes 5 minutes or less, I just wake up in the morning, get it done, out the window, someone else's problem for a little bit. So that really helps me prioritize and clearing the inbox. And then my third step is actually take stock of what the task you're being asked to do is, because especially in public international law and investment treaty arbitration, there is a wealth of information of say, a memorial on behalf of a state defending an investment treaty arbitration, and you're setting out what the legal standard for, I don't know, fair and equitable treatment is, I can guarantee you will not go through every single case that has talked about fair and equitable treatment. So tell yourself, okay, how long do I have for this task? Okay, what's the best I can do in this time frame? This is something actually that I need to keep telling our younger associates, because some of them still come from this side of academia where first you need to review everything and then you make those conclusions. In this regard, it's like, no, okay, I have 3 days to put the best case forward for my client on this topic. And then knowing that that's the goal and that's the terms, then you adapt the work accordingly. At least I think that works really well for me in not being overwhelmed by the amount of things just out there in terms of international law. So yeah, those would be my top tips in that regard.
Thank you. Ioana, do you want to add to this in regards to how you manage stress?
I relate very much to what Clàudia was saying. I'm a very organized person. I think in this field it's difficult to be not to have like to-do list and mementos and Outlook reminders everywhere. What I can say is that for me, it's very important to have this private aspect of my life. And this is why maybe this is also the case for other person that want to build a family. When you want to have both career and personal life, you need to take some decisions that, of course, would at a certain stage of your life affect one or another. So in order to have them both, in my case, I decided I won't work after 6 o'clock or in the weekends. But this is my personal decision. And as you said earlier, if you don't call up, nobody will for you. So this is one thing, to put on a stop, to fix, like Clàudia said, to fix like a term to deliver my duties. And also, I think what is important when you have an emergent situation, which occurs quite frequently, usually when you work with governments and states and international organization, you are put in a situation to deal with urgent interim measures or any other request from judges, from high-level officials. And in this situation, first thing I will make a break. I'll say that I always had a very good relationship with my manager. So I am used to go and see with them which is the plan, the battle plan. So first thing first, I would say talk to your colleague, talk to your manager, and cool down a little bit, breathe in, breathe out, and then yes, take action. But don't stay alone in your office and try to figure out by yourself in case of emergency or stressful situations.
Thank you. And Tina, what advice would you offer in regards to managing stress in your position?
So what I'm going to say now is not something I'm proud about. But I will tell you just to see that you don't have to, and actually you should not make the mistakes or get used to the lifestyle that I have. Somehow, for various reasons, objective and subjective, I have not been really able to manage stress and to structure my workday in a normal way. So I've been in legal career for more than 15 years, and I do not think that I have had 15 days of holiday. I work probably 12, 13 hours at least every day. If I'm lucky and I have Sunday off, that's very good. I work 6 days a week usually. And I have the holidays like official holidays, not the vacation, for catching up the things that I was not able to finish. I don't know why it's happening that way. For the reasons that, I mean, you will be asked to do as much as you do. So therefore, it's important, as others mentioned, that you control your workload. I have not been able to do that ever, whether I work for government or for non-governmental organization. And it's equally, if not more difficult with private clients, because they expect you to pick up the phone when they call. And it could be any time of a day or night, especially if you work in different time zones, like I've been for several years. When you work for the government, everything is urgent there, always. It's a crisis and you have to react. I mean, therefore, it has been difficult. What I notice, though, is that I can do this risk and this workload, handle the workload for a certain period of time. For me, it's about 7, 8 years, and then I need to have a break. And the break is a few months. Where I just have to focus on my mental and physical health, do things that I absolutely enjoy, and do not go to work every day, or somehow like reduce my workload extremely. It's never like work free, but I can, I mean, I know that physically I have to take a break. So that's not a good thing at all. And I reached out recently and asked for professional help. How can I manage my workload? How can I say, no, I can't do it? And that's okay. So I want you to know that it's okay to say that you cannot take this additional case, or you cannot finish this memo today, and you probably need tomorrow or a few more days, or you need help, you need more people on your team to do the work. So it's extremely complicated for me, and I know that it's important. So please don't do what I do. I've told all this to you because I know that you will find yourselves in the situation when you may feel that, oh, you have no choice. You do have choice. And you have to be brave enough to make the right choice for yourself. Of course, we are lawyers. We have duty to our clients, and we have to do everything we can to support and help. But you need to be healthy and happy to be able to provide the legal advice or assistance that your client is looking for, irrespective who the client is, private or public entity.
Thank you so much, Tina. And may I make a note that it is near midnight where you are, I believe, and here we are talking about balance and workload, and you're talking to us or speaking to us near midnight. So my gratitude, my sincere gratitude, and I hope the audience will extend that as well, that you are taking time, valuable time, to speak with them today. Vicki, I will go to you next in terms of how you manage stress.
I'm going to kind of pick up exactly on what Tina has said immediately, because I kind of know where you're coming from there. But for me, it's around having a good network of people around who you can kind of go to for support. I mean, I work as an independent consultant at the moment, so human rights consultant. So my work is either feast or famine, managing through that uncertainty and those moments when it's a bit leaner, and then those moments when it's very busy and I've got 3 or 4 projects on the go at one time. But what I've done, and what I've positively and actively done, is kind of built a close network of consultant colleagues and peers around me who I can go to, talk to, and sort of offload a bit and sort of share that anxiety and stress with a little bit, and always get, you know, a good listening ear back. So that's kind of how I manage that. But it is a point that Dina said about the work that we do is very hard and very confronting, and how we sort of personally take care of ourselves. I've had sort of a very sort of visceral experience of that when I was at the Foreign Office. I was a human rights advisor to the Foreign Office here in London, advising on any human rights issues affecting British nationals detained overseas. And I had a case where a hunger striker died on my watch, and that was a very difficult case to deal with. And we were very fortunate because we had a counsellor at the Foreign Office who we could go to talk to about these issues. So having that kind of separate person there who you can talk to and manage that sort of stress, I think is really helpful as a professional there. Doesn't kind of quite attend to the workload issue, but more about the nature of the work that we do, that it is so, it is very palpable and very profound. So those would be my points, I think.
Thank you so much. Thank you all of you to responding so well and so eloquently to my particular questions in regards to the moderator session. I want to pivot now to the questions posed in the chat box. I do believe we likely, it's possible we will get through all of these, though it is also possible that we won't get to all of these, in which case I might ask our gracious panelists to respond to a few of them individually. But I'm going to start with those that are posed to all panelists for the benefit of the audience. And I know, Elena Overstreet, your question actually is a nice segue from the previous question, and also was the one question I didn't get to in the moderator session. So I want to go ahead and pull apart or pull on that. So Elena asks if any of you have families, and if that's the case, was it difficult to get hired or balance the travel with your family obligations? And I know Ioana and Tina in particular are going to want to respond to this, and how to balance in particular that dynamic, right? Being a parent as well as being a professional. And particularly Elena is asking in the case of young women who are just starting families. So I don't know, Tina, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I have not had a problem. I never felt that I was not hired or my manager had a second thought because I had a family. I mean, I did not have family when I started, so, but it is difficult. It's still difficult. It has always been difficult for me. I planned my pregnancy according to the big deadlines that I have, and it sounds terrible probably, but I had to, and nobody asked me to do so. I mean, I need to make it clear, that's like, it was what I believed in, that this was very important, as important as my family planning, and I had somehow to find a balance between the two. And my son was 3 weeks old when I had to go to the US for a week-long, very important trip to discuss strategic partnership agreement between Georgia and the United States. This was like historic for my country, for its national security and development and prosperity. And I had to do it. And I know it was a big sacrifice, but I believe that I was doing it for my son and for others in my country. So yes, this is hard. For me, balance is never finding a middle ground. Honestly, it's not that. I spend more time on work when work requires more time, and I try to spend more time with my family when they need me most. I have extremely good support from my husband, from my mother, who takes care of my son when I travel. And it's not only travel, it's a case preparation, which is very stressful and requires a lot of work, as my colleagues here can confirm. And trials sometimes last for days and weeks even. And when, I mean, most times I had to travel to another capital for trial because of where the court is located. And during this time, you don't really, I mean, I hardly have time to even talk to your family. But I try to discipline myself. Every morning I talk to my son. We do homework together by Skype. So I'm there, we talk. He needs time with me to talk and share his day and his emotions. So I give him this time, whatever happens. But I also know that when I'm so busy, my family is trying to protect me, and they are not very honest to me about like sharing their concerns and worries. And if someone feels not very well, I mean, they protect me from giving additional worry. So it's that type of collaboration and support, moral and physical even sometimes, because sometimes I need sleep. And I mean, my husband would not hesitate and actually would initiate to go and make dinner for me. So we understand. We talked about this from the very beginning. He knew me when I was already in the profession. And we understand each other. We try to support each other, but you know, it's always hard. You want to be with your child. It's not that your child will not be taken care of if you are not there. It's not about that. You want it, you need it, and it's difficult, but somehow technology helps. The communication is easier compared to what was 20 years ago when I was for instance, an exchange high school student, and my parents could call me only once a month. So that's, we are creative. And I want to mention one particular thing. In my case, the school and kindergarten helped us a lot, because apparently my son complained to the kindergarten teacher about me traveling a lot and being gone for weeks. And instead of complaining back to me, the kindergarten teacher told me that, Tina, you are doing very important things for yourself and for the cause. So never feel sorry about not being here. And she just asked me if I could share with her where I was, when I was gone, and which country. And she would mention this with my son and his friends in a way that made my son proud, that I was doing something important and interesting and exciting. So I am thankful to her and to others in the kindergarten and in the school that my son goes, because they've been supportive. And I think we should support each other in that, and we should understand that it's not easy for anyone. So that's important.
Thank you so much. And I believe, Vicki, you also have the challenge of navigating the waters between parenthood and professionalism. Is that correct? No, not.
No, I have no children that I know of, but maybe there are a few. No, I don't have. No.
No, that's Ioana. Ioana, you have a family, is that correct? So do you want to speak?
Yes, exactly.
Sorry about that. We have 40 minutes, I believe. So we'll kind of move to other questions too, but I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to speak.
Of course. I just want to say that I totally relate to what Tina was saying, and I even got a little bit emotional about it, because even the story about the kindergarten, I totally recognize that. And if I should add something, is that it's exactly this. You need to explain to your entourage, to your family, to your friends, to your partner, to all the persons that you are interacting. Why is this so complex and so difficult? And I'm sure everyone will be there to support you and to help you as for each thing we talked about earlier, support, being with other people. It's a special, let's say, profession, and one can only be successful by being in a team, in a multi how can I say this, when you have more professionals helping you to achieve your goals finally. And you can also try to see your professional project like a family project if your partner and your family agree to that. So think about it from this perspective also. It doesn't have to be only professional oriented. You can mix both of them, and as Tina very well said, balance is not perfect balance, depending on the momentum, depending on specific circumstances, mission or not mission, I don't know, private or public, because there also are specific circumstances. You can decide where you want to take your family project. But yes, we need help in this in this profession, a lot of help.
Thank you. And I'm going to start our questions to, let's see, individual panelists, I believe. And I appreciate, again, we have a lot of questions. And so panelists, if you want to respond in writing to some of the questions posed, that would be beneficial too. Although I know it's kind of hard to do that while also speaking. Let's see, I believe this is directed towards Vicki, and it's about your preference to either practice law or to work in academia. Because I know Clàudia mentioned that you worked in academia and then you pivoted off to practice and you might be returning. But Vicki, this one's specifically to you as to whether or not you prefer practicing law or working in academia, and why.
So I sort of call myself, or I think of myself as a bit of a academic, which is sort of somewhere between a practitioner and an academic. I have dipped my feet into the world of academia in that just after I left the Foreign Office, I taught the International Human Rights Law course at Surrey University for 3 years. And thereafter, immediately thereafter, I went to McGill and did a fellowship in residence at the Centre for Human Rights and Legal Pluralism, where I did some research. So I've kind of dipped my foot in the water of academia, but never been a full-time academic. So I kind of sit somewhere between the two. I like them. I like them both, and I like the kind of the broad sort of experience that you get from being a practitioner, but also kind of having the academic sort of bent inside as well. So I think they can work together quite well. Actually, you can sort of do a bit of guest lecturing here and there, or you can do sort of dip your feet in there. So yeah, it works for me, I think.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And I think, let's see, some of our questions are in specific regards to different experience. So I'm going to kind of go down here to Gracie Watson's question in regards to where you get your law degree, right? So the question is to all panelists, although not everyone has to answer it, but do you see an advantage to having an American law degree? Of course, that's different, an American law degree or versus a degree from somewhere abroad.
I can take this one to begin with. in the field of law that I practice in, which is, as I said, public international law and investment treaty arbitration, there is certainly a preference for common law educated lawyers. I say this because, as I mentioned, I'm Spanish, so I have a civil law degree, although now I'm transitioning to a common law degree as well. But there is certainly an advantage there, and the training that you get at US universities is extremely good. However, they do come at a cost. So I don't side of the traditional big US firms, and if you're thinking potentially working in Europe, for instance, then a UK degree might actually work better in your favor because it's going to come with a much less hefty price tag, and at the same time, it's also going to open certain doors. So I would say it certainly depends on where you'd like ideally to practice, but generally a common law degree will serve you very well, I would say.
For a second, I just really need to say this, that I agree, Clàudia. That's very important. Me too. I'm coming from civil law country, but in international law, it's very important to have good understanding of common law system. Yes, I did my LLM in the US, and I know US law schools, and I studied also in law school in UK, so I can compare. And the practical, I know that many of you probably are not happy with the practical skills and knowledge you receive at the law school, but it's the best probably you can get in any law school. So it's which country you choose, it's really up to you. And I know there are a lot of factors that play in the decision making, but keep in mind that common law system is really helpful if you want to pursue international career.
Okay, excellent. Is there any other, Vicki, do you want to add to that, or can we go to another question, which I think is related? So I guess I'll ask it, and then if you want to elaborate on both of them. Jordan Bailey is asking specifically about international business, and I see this is related, meaning, do you have any advice for individuals who are wanting to work in that particular realm, and what opportunities might be available to those who are looking at international business? And I would kind of tie to that whether or not a law degree might be necessary in that realm.
Let me volunteer here. Yeah, international, I mean, I was not particularly interested in international business, but I realized that in my work, I did need several times the knowledge and understanding of international business law. I'm not like the best person to advise you on the career path, but what I understand is that a law degree will definitely help you because of the skills that legal education gives you on the one hand, and on the other, they do need someone with knowledge of law. The concern there is that, I mean, when you work for multinational companies, and you have lots of opportunities there, it's a license, right? I mean, where you can practice law. And for instance, if you can practice law in the US and you work in another country outside the US, then it's like, how helpful is your license and your knowledge as well? So if you want to build your career in international business, I think you should keep in mind when you choose the classes in a law school. And of course, contracts, torts, transactions, companies, that's like foundation basics that you need to know. But at the same time, at some point later in your law school years, take comparative laws, take the classes that gives you understanding of how other systems work. And I think someone mentioned here languages. I mean, make sure that you speak. It is very good in public international law to speak a foreign language, but we joke that broken English is the language of public international law. So it's okay with English, and you are native speakers, most of you probably, that's fine. But if you go to business, it's important that you speak another language, because for more private entity relationships, it's extremely helpful that you can communicate in the language that these people speak. And unfortunately, even though a lot of people speak English, you cannot assume that all of them do. So that's not the fact. So, I mean, that's my take on the career in international business law.
Okay, wonderful. I have one very you, Tina, and since your mic, or since you were kind of up, I'll kind of pose it to you, because as Pat mentions, this chat box is going to go away after the panel ends, and it'll go into oblivion. So I want to make sure that we don't do that. So this particular question, and perhaps you can connect with this particular audience member offline, because I feel like it's a pretty large answer. But she wants to know about when you brought Russia to the ICJ, on what grounds you did so, right? So specifically using domestic Russian law, incentivizing them to come to court, and if you could expand upon that, again, in the amount of time that we have available.
Yeah, I mean, I will be very brief. No, we could not, and we did not use Russian law to do that. There are a few grounds for bringing a state at the International Court of Justice. One is that some states recognize the jurisdiction of ICJ in all cases. So what they ratify the UN Charter and recognize the jurisdiction very clearly, directly, specifically. So no implied recognition of jurisdiction. Unfortunately, big and powerful states don't do that, including Soviet Union, and then Russia continued to do the same. Another ground is that states agree that, okay, there's a dispute between two of us and we go to the ICJ, let ICJ decide. Third ground is, and it was impossible with Russia, of course. And third ground is that you find a treaty that has a so-called compromissory clause, which says that if there is a disagreement on the interpretation or application of this treaty, the states, the matter can be decided by the ICJ. And that was the only choice for us, but we had to find a treaty relevant to our situation. So there is this international covenant on the convention on the elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. This convention was drafted to address the apartheid in South Africa, and just is focused heavily on racial discrimination, but it defines racial discrimination as something including discrimination based on ethnicity or nationality. I mean, not citizenship. So that's like what we used. This convention, I mean, Soviet Union ratified because they never thought that it could ever be used against them. When Soviet Union collapsed, Russia did not put a reservation on this clause, again hoping that this was not something they could be sued for. And we use this convention, but it was never applied before, and there was a lot of concern about the procedures that we need to do before seizing the courts. So it's a long and complicated matter, but the short answer is that we use the international covenant and not the Russian law.
Thank you so much, Tina, and thank you to the rest of our panelists. Again, I know it's very late where you are, now past midnight, I believe, for Tina. So thank you all for participating. Thank you for your insight. Thank you, Pat, and to the Tennessee World Affairs Council for hosting this event. Thank you to our program sponsors and to all in the audience for taking your time out to learn more. We appreciate you. We appreciate your curiosity. And continued engagement, and hope that you will take the pieces of advice offered here and go forward and succeed in your chosen paths. Thank you all very much, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you again. Bye.
Thank you.